Chapter 1. Rachel. What are you doing in here? It's 10 o'clock, don't you have a home to go to? He glanced down at me with those large blue magnetic eyes. A strange look flashed in them, his gaze mixed with passion and contempt. I would swear I had never seen eyes like his, so intense, so passionate, but his passion wasn't for me and I knew why. I had been at this company for less than a month. He didn't know I existed until now. I was probably an annoyance, someone who had cost him money, because of extra security needed to watch this floor after hours, and my unnecessary use of electricity. With the rich, even the use of a light would factor into their bottom line, and their bottom line was making sure they saved all the money they could to pay for cars, or those expensive tailored suits they changed every day. I couldn't take my eyes off his face to admire his suit. His face was bold and handsome, reserved, stubborn and arrogant. This was the first time I'd caught even a glimpse of Harper Samsa, one of the owners of the Samsa Corporation. He was more exciting and sexier in person than the description of him passed around by horny women at the coffee station and nearby bar. He had a ruggedly handsome face, with a mouth full of white pampered teeth. His dark full head of curly hair and dark eyebrows emphasized his blue eyes, making them noticeable, compelling and laced with lust. His fresh body smell of shower gel lured me into taking in his entire physique, making me breathless. I broke my gaze to notice his expensive dark blue suit framing wide shoulders. My eyes scanned his blue and white silk tie, and his crisp white shirt sporting expensive cufflinks. His chest was muscular with equally hard, long arms. I bit my lip. Just as I thought, too good looking to be real, but he was real, and Harper Samsa stood over me, taking my breath away with his icy expression and all of his stunning good looks and muscular body. He stared down at me, his eyes two sparkling pools of icy radiance. I was sitting huddled over the computer screen, my fingers moving quickly, trying to complete the day's work before he ordered me to stop. I didn't pause to answer him, because I had to get this last email out. I'd been warned by his secretary, Ms. St. John, your position in this company depends on you answering all the emails, calling these clients, and arranging meetings for Mr. Samsa, at his convenience, of course, she barked, after dropping a heavy book on my desk of all the things she had neglected to do for the past month or two. All done, I murmured low and blew out a small breath. Are you one of those? He asked, maybe annoyed, or maybe he didn't know the correct term. His comment caught me by surprise and left me confused. I glanced up at him, my forehead furrowed. One of those what, sir? My voice was small and sounded nervous. I placed my reading glasses carefully on my desk, turned the computer off, and looked up at the over 6-foot height of this gorgeous man with wide shoulders, long legs, and a serious, hungry gaze, and that gaze was aimed at me. Well, I guess you aren't. He must have thought I was hard of hearing. Had he come 10 minutes earlier, I would have been listening to my favorite songs, and I wouldn't have heard a thing. Why are you still here? He said with a quiet, strong voice. His voice rang with command. I didn't think I should lie, but I didn't want to tell the truth. I fumbled for words. To catch up on my work, which was the truth, but I didn't want to say that his secretary was either incompetent or lazy. I didn't know which, but since she'd hired me when I thought no one would give me a paying job, I felt a certain loyalty to her. His face softened from the V his thick eyebrows made at first. He was more handsome than I imagined, after I got a better look at him. The flush in my cheeks must have given me away. His mouth and face made me pause and search for my words, because when the dim light reflected on his strong jaw and his sensuous full lips, that alone set my pulse working overtime, and the moisture began pooling inside my panties. I'm sure he heard my rapid breathing. The way he looked at me with a mysterious grin, I would swear he could read my mind and his eyes could see through my clothes. I hoped he didn't notice my reaction to him, because at any moment I wanted to stand and look him in the eyes, pull my hair out of that ponytail and fall into his arms, but instead I lowered my head, stayed seated, and searched around for my purse, as his brilliant eyes kept me from bolting to the exit, but he was standing in my way, and those long arms would have preventing me from getting past him. Fumbling around for my shoes, I managed to retrieve them from my desk. They were 6-inch heels, my celebratory heels that were pulled out for a job well done. The last time I dragged those shoes out was during my college graduation, where I got drunk and tripped and fell, almost breaking an arm. That was 6 months ago. I had planned on wearing them to celebrate holding on to this position for a month. As I dangled the shoes in my hands, trying to figure out where to put them, they caught his eyes. My dark suit with the white blouse with a collar to my chin, neither fitted my profile nor my shoes. I heard him give out a small chuckle. He knew I was nervous, and he seemed to enjoy playing with me, like a cat would with a bird. He could have walked away, however. He stood there, never letting me out of his sight. I felt like a caged animal as his eyes wandered over my body, and there were no words exchanged between us, just him looking at me and me trying to hide in plain sight. When I thought he would step away and give me space to stand, he didn't budge. He stood to the right of me with his hand on the desk between me and my path to escape. It was as if I was imprisoned between his gorgeous body and my desk, and the only way out was to go through him. If I were to be an animal, it would be a rabbit. I was scared to even look around because I knew it was just me and him in that large space, but there was no way for me to get out of that cubicle. My eyes moved up to his broad chest and then his mouth. He had the strangest smile which bordered between cool and warm, then his lips tightened. "What is your name?" He looked down on me, as if he was a predator looming over his prey. I couldn't get that picture out of my mind. What did he remind me of? When I answered his question, it was with a nervous stammer. "Rachel Esser. Rachel Legrand." For some reason, after I got that out, I wasn't afraid of him, and I relaxed and took a long breath. My eyes went to his shoes. They were expensive, the kind that were made for men with money to burn. He placed his hand on the arm of my chair. He had no wedding ring on those long, slim fingers. He pulled off his tie and held it in one hand, then unbuttoned the top button of his shirt, and he caught me looking at the opening filled with dark, silky hair. His wide shoulders and muscular chest moved as he breathed, and I saw his nostrils flare as if he didn't like what he was smelling. I'd remembered to bring extra panty liners, and I used them, because I had been working late, and I had plans to join some of the girls after work at the nearby bar. I thought I was fresh enough. I watched at his right hand flexed. No ring marks there. Good. That was a good thing, but for what? I asked myself. Why was that a good thing? There's no way he would be interested in me. After all, I was just an assistant to his secretary, and I didn't think I was drop-dead gorgeous, just an average-looking young woman who wore glasses. Finally, I said to myself, what the hell? He doesn't have the right to control my movements. As I got the nerve to stand with him not moving an inch, and making it uncomfortable for me to move around him, I managed to stand up away from my desk with him not giving an inch of space. At the same time, he stared at me with those expectant blue eyes clinging to my face, wondering what I would do next, his eyelids closing and opening quickly as his sweeping thick dark eyelashes covered them. His head tilted to the side as his eyes only opened halfway, making him look sleepy and sexy. I imagined he wondered how I would maneuver my exit away from him, and I thought the same. He watched me, appraising my every move and surveying me from head to toe. When I stood in front of him, I barely touched his shoulder with my flats. I could feel the heat of his body through my thin polyester skirt and white blouse. My skin bristled from the intensity of the warmth from both our bodies, which awakened me with a powerful desire I'd only flirted with before now. My nipples reacted because of our nearness, and when he looked down at me, as if he felt my arousal, and I looked at him to see the desire and hunger glow in his eyes. I saw his mouth open slightly to let out a wisp of breath and his tongue swipe the bottom lip. I wasn't sure he wanted to eat me, or have his way with me sexually. We both became aware of the hardness of his thighs brushing against my waist, yet he didn't move away from me, and I made no gesture to move away from him. I was mature enough to know that I wanted to be near him, and if I had said, "Mr. Samsa, you are making me feel uncomfortable," then he probably would have stepped aside, but I wouldn't and didn't, because he was so damn handsome and commanding that I would have done anything at that time to please him, including giving him a blowjob if he'd unzipped those expensive pants. But he would have had to teach me, and I didn't think he was the teaching kind. I said in a shaky voice, "Today I had so much to do," I mumbled. "I had to work late to get it all done on time." That had been a lie, but I thought he fell for it when he smiled. Why wouldn't he? He had no reason to know that I had been trying to catch up with Ms. St. John's work for weeks. If he did, why did he wait until now to approach me? It's the end of the month, and I know how important it is to get these papers and emails out to your clients, I admitted, adding cream to the cake I was serving up to him for his approval. "Well, you're the kind of employee we like to have in the Samsa family," he said in a gruff, soft voice. "Now go home to your husband and children." "I don't have a husband and children," I said awkwardly, trying to send the right message that I was available. "Then, try to get in on time so you don't have to work into the night." How did he know I was late today of all days? It must have been the secretary who leaked that news to him. He must have read my file or seen a tape with all these cameras about, when he asked the question about a husband, and, heaven forbid, children. I couldn't take care of myself in this expensive town, let alone any children. If he didn't check my file, or had time to watch the camera, and why would he? Then Ms. St. John must have mentioned my tardiness, and there were no husband or children, but I was sure she forgot to inform him that I had been doing her work from the day she sent me to Human Resources. Ms. St. John didn't like me from the beginning, but she needed someone at the last minute to catch up with all this work. I somehow found myself here working 5 hours overtime, and late in the morning as usual. Next time I wouldn't ask for a ride from my roommate, I'd take mass transportation, bus or trolley, but I was still trying to find my way home. That is, if there is a next time. Mr. Harper Samsa, realizing that he might have intimidated me, gave me one quick indulgent glance and stepped aside and turned and strolled away. I watched him stride to the door, his long legs gliding across the floor like a graceful, majestic animal. If I would venture to say, a wolf. I laughed at the thought. When he reached the door, he turned toward me with a smirk and a pleased look. Turning back, he opened the door, left it ajar, walked down the hall and stepped in his office, and closed his door behind him, making a soft click. He had pushed the boundaries of employer and employee relationship, and I'd let him. I smiled to myself and shook my head, thought about his handsome face, dreamy blue eyes, his immaculate suit that hugged his body the way I wanted to, and that pristine white shirt and the sparkle from his expensive cufflinks, in my thoughts that remained long after he disappeared into his office. I had never seen gold cufflinks before with initials on them. HS for Harper Samsa, and I giggled. Why wouldn't he wear a suit that appeared to cost more than my month's salary? I know I would if I had his money. However, I expected to see him in a t-shirt and jeans, because there was something rugged hiding behind his model appearance and designer suits. It had been stated in the employee's brochure that he wanted his employees comfortable and happy, but he looked anything but comfortable or happy.